here. All right, and we should be good. All right. That'll be good. All right, I'm Michael Matthews, and we tonight are going to be creating a Cortex Prime mod for Vampire. I am. I've been playing role playing games for a very long time, but Cortex in particular, I have had since essentially Leverage and Smallville came out, and Smallville is easily my favorite game, and one that I've talked about a great deal on, uh, especially on TikTok. So one of the things we want to look at is how to put together a mod for to basically recreate Vampire in Cortex. Because for my money, Cortex is probably the best system to actually do Vampire in because the nature of that particular game isn't particularly well supported by the rules. So what I'm going to be doing is creating a character sheet essentially. Now, what's going to keep this should be legal is the fact that I'm not going to be like you'll have to actually own Vampire and Cortex to run this and put this together. So let me just check. So what we're going to be doing, I have got over here a little like how to make a vampire thing with a quick like some things to look quickly. Some info from Vampire, Cortex Prime itself, and I'm going to actually I don't drive my correct side of the screen. They're showing up there. And then we got a vampire, the character sheet we're going to put together. I'm also going to make a note of the Cortex mods, and I will. I've got here the online version of rules, which is actually a really nice kind of version of it. So there we go. So that could be useful if I'm looking for things. I think I'm going to spend some time here. All right, so to begin with, player name. And we're going to make a couple pros. This is going to be ugly as far as this goes because this is not my gift. But make a thing here for distinctions. I definitely know I want to use. I definitely know I want to use values and relationships. Those are kind of no brainers for this one for vampire. I'll go over why in a moment. So we're essentially going to be setting this up similar to how Smallville is done. And Smallville is my favorite game because what it is essentially hour-long soap opera, the role-playing game, and the nature of it means that you really can approach it similar to a way an actor would approach a character because you're dealing with their values are as well as what their relationships are. Every time you roll, you got a value and a relationship. Being that we're going to make this vampire, we're going to make those values and relationships, a little more corrupt. And there's a few ideas I've currently got that might not be things that if I were to run this, that some of them we might stick with, some of them we might drop after a bit. Um, so let's kind of. I'm going to first go with distinctions because there's a specific kind of distinction I think that I want to use in this that will actually not only give some more dice to roll, which means more complications can come up, because someone had asked on TikTok, hey, what's up? Someone asked on TikTok if I was going to be using the Doom pool. I think the Doom pool is a little too random. Like it can build really nicely, but complications, especially if they're rolling a bunch of dice, can do some really fun things that I think put you a little bit more into that cutthroat situation of vampire, especially because sometimes the consequences will be more like political or personal, even in something that might be, combat or something like what it should give is like a good amount of place for fallout of people's actions to really sort of like hit the ground and make cool things happen. So that's complications. Where are the distinctions? Oh, this is all alphabetical order, so this will be easy. Now, distinctions are what you kind of start with when it comes to Cortex. uh, like you usually like if you're doing it the way they do it in like leverage, what you essentially have are phrases that describe who your character is. You can roll them as a D8 anytime you roll, or you can choose one of them to roll at a D4 and gain a plot point. It is a really kind of quick and easy way to make sure you're getting plot points in. And it's out of print right now, but unfortunately, the Firefly role playing game did an amazing job of actually showing why that is super important in when it comes to Cortex, because it's a thing that can let you win when you might not otherwise in a contest. Though what we'll find out is you're not always looking to win, particularly when it is set up like Smallville. So one of them, I think we definitely want a clan distinction that will be something you basically put in the clan, and like if you're a Brewhoff, for example, if being a Brewhoff, that hot headedness is getting in the way right now, you take it at a D4 and you get yourself that plot point. It's an easy way to kind of put in the what's happening with the clan of the character. Uh, but I think an interesting thing here. Now is a mod now that might actually be in the main book, because I think the clan is one of the places, like the clan and the disciplines, and possibly even into like the values and such wouldn't make as much sense here. But I think with the clan and the abilities we get, actually getting into the place where instead of having a single die for each thing, which is what most of the time you actually have like scale. I think it's called scale dice. Let me take a look. Um, prime sets attributes powers hero dice. Look for scale, because the one of the Marvel one that actually didn't come out, unfortunately, the Annihilation Wave, I think it was, has rules for like ships and things that actually have more than one dice. So you can have a character who is an elder is rolling extra dice with all the stuff they do at kind of higher levels. A generation die would actually probably also be a good idea that is maybe always rolled in. Do this. That leaves enough for 3 other distinctions. Now, what I've done when I have run Smallville is I've essentially set up so that looks. Let's do this. So we can basically the generation die as a what starts off as like a single die, and maybe as you go up, it gets bigger. But we also start to make that larger. Is one of the things you really want like older vampires to seem more powerful, and one of the ways to do that is to have them always roll extra dice of probably a fairly like decent size. So one of the things I'll be doing here is I've been putting that into the wrong one. I mean, it doesn't really matter. I'll just rename them. Special rules. Then I'll make the character sheet. So a player is probably going to start off, and it's one of the ones you can actually do it by generation. And once again, let's just check this stuff on scale dice, because they can do some interesting. The advantages of scale. You decide go with scale dice and keep 2 additional dice for the total. Oh wait, I should put my glasses back on. Let me also tell some people that I am doing this. Boo, 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 boo. All right. In some cases, conflict might take place between 2 radically different sizes, scale, or degrees of power. Example might be a lone PC taking on someone in an armored car, similar to sort of mega dice or mega damage in. We'll say Robotech because it makes sense in Robotech. It's very frustrating in Rifts. Now with the scale dice, this also adds an extra die into their total for free. Okay, that is one of the things that would make a higher generation vampire very powerful. So I think that could be like kind of like wonderfully dangerous. Additional die represents a pretty profound advantage. You just got to decide to go with a 2d8 scale and keep 2 additional dice for the total. But this is overwhelming, which it says also adds an extra die into the total for scale and keep 2 additional dice for the total. This is overwhelming advantage. Usually it's best to make a ruling and move on. Armor charge, machine guns, sprays, and bullets. We want this to be something that is unfair. Using this mod, the scale dice may roll be any size from a d4 to a d12, each step representing an increasingly large target. You can choose to split the scale die up into smaller dice. Okay, so I think keeping that available. So one of the things here for generation dice, it'll begin at, we'll say it starts at d6. As the generation grows, it goes up a die size. When it gets above 12, it goes scale and adds 6 plus 1 additional die for total. Yeah, d6, d8, so basically you got like whatever the you know what they. I always think of the old vampire, which I think was 9th generation. So it'd be like 6 d8, so it's 9, 10, 9, 8, 7th. So 6, 8, 10. 6th generation would be the d12, and then below that they start to gain extra to the die total, which is essentially like having a plot point on every single roll they make. Which, as that one goes up, they get more dice. That can be pretty powerful. I think this can also powers are capped at. Well, no, we should. They also skills as well. Capped at generation after D12. So I think that's something that will make older vampires, maybe more experienced ones, seem. Actually, no. You know what? Let's do this. Let's make this a slight change. Let's have it start at D8. It makes them more powerful just for being a vampire, so that's good. Something that's older very quickly kind of gets D12, adds some more stuff in there, and becomes a lot scarier. I think that will work. Yeah, we'll have them start at D8. Okay, so generation die, and I'll make here rules. And make a note that'll usually be. Okay, and we're gonna make sure that everything. Nope, nope, nope. Do not merge cells. I want the text to wrap. Otherwise, drive me up a wall. So you have a clan distinction. Make a note here. D8 or D4 plus 1 plot point. Clan distinction, and then they'll have 3 other distinctions. Like kind of like your standard one. So they'll have a number of different options to help decide, like, who is this person. If you happen to have been a circus performer in there, you could put that in there as well. Now we've got values. We're going to have trait statements. We're going to have, and I'll explain how those work in a bit. They just make sure all of those are merged horizontally. And we'll put reduce total for if they challenge them. Now I'm going to come back. I am a little kind of curious. I'm not entirely sold on what I want to do for. I mean, the values. Let's put a couple things I think that will definitely be important. I mean, injury. Sure, we'll put that down there. But then I think humiliated. We want to look at the ways in which vampires themselves, especially in a more political game, can be kind of reduced. Humiliated could work. Enraged, because the ones in Smallville are things like um, afraid, exhausted, insecure, things along those lines, which is great for Smallville, but is not what we want here. I mean, I think injury, humiliated, enraged. I think we're going to have a special blood, a blood track, which I want that to work a little bit differently. Um, blood complications can come. Let's just take all this. Bridge horizontally. Let's also wrap that text. Okay. Complications can cause from supernatural abilities. So abilities or damage can cause blood stress. So essentially, what we're doing is there's nothing that really would work the same as the hunger dice in Vampire Fifth Edition, which I think is a brilliant addition. Because for the most part, I mean this might come kind of close actually. For the most part, the hunger dice or the blood points in the original Vampire were just your battery of using your superhuman abilities. And to be honest, when I ran it, and we didn't go totally rules heavy because there was 9 to 13 players in it, for the most part, it was never really a concern. But when I ran Vampire Fifth, because you have like 5 blood points, but you don't know when you use your powers, some of them are going to say make a rouse check, and also each morning you make a rouse check. So you might lose one of those 5 or more if you have to roll more than one rouse dice, and fail, more than one. You don't quite know how much you're going to use. So the idea of hunger in the beast actually becomes a really interesting problem in Vampire Fifth. This might be my way of trying to make that happen in a vampire camp, in a Cortex campaign. So when you roll ones, you can basically use that to cause blood stress. And what makes sense here is you get rid of it by feeding, which reduces the die size of pose the wrong word, prey, by on a 1-to-1 die basis. So you'll have a lot of people who might just have, this is a D6 regular person. If you've taken enough stress, you're not going to be able to feed yourself all the way down on one person without killing them. We'll say D8. D8 is the standard for a person. Because D8 would let you get from D6 on down, with D4, D6, from a D12, D10, D8. So if you're too bad, it may require more than one person unless you're going to kill them. Um, but killing one person and then draining another one most of the way down would also do it. So that's also a possibility. This is one of those things that in play I would start to mess with to see how it feels. Does it feel like too much? Because you often just want to be able to hand wave the feeding, but if it's important, I'll make a note here. Often, kind of hand wave feeding with with a check, but if it's important and urgent, this is how they feed. So it might be when they go out to feed at night, they're able to get sort of several people. I remember in 5th edition of Vampire for the feeding. Now, by the way, if you have not seen the 5th edition Vampire book, it is about as poorly laid out as any book I've ever seen. It's bad. It is it's so frustrating to actually try to like reference in play. Okay, so we can look for blood. Well, I look at it like because eyes are not what they used to be. Blood leech, blood stirs, blood sorcery. Um, well, or hunt. It'd be hunting instead of feeding. Hunger. Go 5. Halfway through the book is where you find hunger. Yes, thank you so much. Now, the bestial failure thing is a super cool thing. The bestial failure or the messy critical, where essentially the beast, if you've got some hunger, can make you go overboard both with victory or with a failure, which I think is really cool. Um, Flaking hunger. Okay, human drained and killed is 5. Maximum non-harmful drink from a human is 2. So yeah, usually you would require 2 to get you down. You can't go below 1 in vampire without killing somebody. So yeah, I think this would be about equivalent. So I do think that will work for our purposes pretty well. Um, character sheet. So we're back to the character sheet. I'm trying to think of things that might work well um, for this. Because there's some political stuff in there with like the humiliated. I think works fairly well there. Enraged, of course, we want something that again feels. Um, we want something that feels like the character's kind of enraged. Insecure, I don't think really work. Angry is kind of enraged. Let me just take a quick double check at a Smallville character sheet. Because the nice thing is usually the players are often able to say it's this, or when we're playing, it's very easy to remember. This is what you got. Lead sheet. I don't know why it went to print. So this is what the sheet looks like for. You make that a little smaller. For Smallville. Afraid, angry, exhausted, insecure, injured. Um, Humiliated, enraged. Afraid. I think that works. One. Insecure doesn't seem to strike it for me. Exhausted doesn't feel very vampire-y. I will put TBD to be determined. The way these work, you know what? He's screwing up. That's not values. Actually, let's do this. I got a little ahead of myself. That's not the values. That is going to be. I don't know why I'm putting this way down here, but it doesn't matter all that. Because this is something we could kind of clean the sheet up later. This will be stress pools, and then put a place here for growth pool. Does not need to be that far away. There. Yeah, so stress pools. There'll be at least one more stress pool there. Blood. See the special rules. So values. Values in Smallville are duty, glory, justice, love, power, and truth. And my God, are a lot of those not correct for for vampire? Because we want to put like what they value, but because it's vampire, we want what they value to be kind of twisted and messed up. Because I think if you're playing vampire and everything's hunky dory and happy, why? They go up to Cortex Plus because Cortex Plus had put out well before they actually put everything together for um, Prime a hacker's guide, and I remember in the hacker's guide someone had essentially done a thing for Vampire when they talked about how to do a Smallville style game. Visible content. So let's see what that is and see if I want to steal any of those. Kingdom is character. The nice thing is this is essentially how to hack, how to make Vampireville 80. It's essentially how to make a Cortex Prime thing, like mod, before Cortex Prime, split it all up and made those things a little bit easier. Actually, speaking of, I'm going to look at the Hacker's Guide for some ideas, because it's got one that's essentially that. But also, I should be looking into this, because there will definitely be some stuff here. And I'll explain how values and relationships work, because they work in very similar ways. And these are my favorite things about Smallville. These are the things that really make it stand out from a lot of other types of games. So, your values. Envy. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do like the seven sins. It's a little boring. Okay, they don't really have a lot of possible values there. I don't know if they had some back. Let's see what they. Allure, charm, menace, mystery. So I think that like if which ones have you played so far? Because I think if you get a couple, like if you're able to play some of the various styles of it a few times, it all sort of makes sense. And granted, I've run a lot of all of the flavors, not as much Marvel Heroic, um, but they have Allure, Charm, Menace, Mystery, Style. I don't know. That's strength. Don't think I want that for value. Oh, not have statements. Okay, it does some different things with. Yeah, small little leverage are kind of like the cornerstones of it. Marvel Heroic opens it up some, but it's one. It is one of those games that it's so easy for me to look at it and start to put stuff together, and I have to imagine until they get more of the spotlights out, it has to be confusing. The reason I'm doing this tonight is someone had written me on TikTok saying, "Hey, you don't know me, but you once suggested uh, Cortex Prime for Vampire," and they're trying to wrap their head around it and kind of failing, which it's a little difficult. I don't blame them for that because it's a little confusing if you haven't done it before. Let's see what I think about these for allure, charm, menace. I don't think so. Like the values in Smallville, the basic duty, glory, justice, love, power, truth. Now a couple of these, we can switch them out for kind of what they mean. I don't think I like these. I'm gonna pop them over here. Whoa. Just to look at. I definitely think power needs to be one of them. Okay. I don't know if love is the right one. If we think of the values that sort of drive vampires when they do things, I think definitely power. Um, Truth, maybe. I don't. I almost want to label love as like obsession, but that feels a little too much. Because having something about attraction those you care about, I think, is important, but I don't necessarily want it to feel as positive as we tend to make love, as love is when we discuss it. I'll do my phrasing there. Oh, hello, person. I'm about to block. Um. Oh my god, I can't even see. Ban them, and now they're gone. Yay. I'm thinking of terms that might fit for vampire. Session's too far in the other direction. I don't necessarily want to go there. Oh, oh! I for some reason the that had disappeared. Okay, let me put this where I can kind of see it. Oh, passion, passion. Actually, yes, passion would be great. Um, Power, truth, passion, glimmer. This is actual vampires, not those guys. Um, Passion works. Power, truth, passion, um, loyalty. Now the thing is, when you have these statements, so passion, truth, power, loyalty. What is it? One, two, three, six normally. Four, so two more. The nice thing about these, so like loyalty can be your trait statement might be like I value loyalty. You know, maybe you have a D8 in it, or it could be loyalty is a thing. Oh, hey, how are you? It could be loyalty is a thing that I use to get what I want. And with the trait statements, what you do is like you've got a die in each of your values. And when it makes sense for what's happening, because you always roll a value, you always roll a relationship, you then roll that whatever that is. But let's say you're someone who feels that like loyalty is what I use to get what I want. However, they're with someone or talking with someone or in a conflict with someone they actually have real loyalty to, which is not how you put your statement. You can challenge your loyalty, which means which is great. That's what you want to do because what it'll do is it will triple your die roll for that one. So instead of a D8, you'd roll 3D8, and it would go down to a D6 for the rest of the session. And at the end of that session, and then it also immediately becomes growth or XP. So it goes into the XP bucket, that D8. And at the end of the session, you can rewrite it and keep it as D8, which shows your character evolving over time on how they see loyalty. Or if you decide that nope, I'm going to stick with this, keep it at that the same thing. Loyalty is what I use to get what I want. You reduce the loyalty, you keep the loyalty at the lower level, but then you add it again to growth pool, so it becomes something that helps like give you essentially XP, which is what makes player versus player uh like player antagonists really work in this in a way that doesn't work in other games. Hey, what's up? I was just explaining the like the trait statements. I'm thinking about two more things for values because right now I'm honestly not terribly far from the basics of having a like a vampire thing for Smallville done, and I've gone through and explained already like clan distinctions, general distinctions, how those work, a generation die that we would use. Relationships will be easy because those just are straight up how they're used in the book, which work the same as values. So think about two more like words that essentially work well for vampire values: power, truth, passion, loyalty. Um, some good ones. I can see if the hacker's guide might have a nice list um, of things that could work. Because how you put those help determine what the game is about. Because if it's all like I did one for politics that had a lot of things about. I think I actually used a dual thing for the values where there could be like the seven virtues or the seven vices, and you could kind of go either way on those, which is probably overdoing it a little bit. Um, yes, right now I'm trying to see if I can get some lists of possibilities. Oh yeah, that one. God, that one was so much. I've run that a couple times before, and that is always a lot of fun. Uh, Were you the one in the first scene where I basically said, "Look, I'm gonna actually put a restriction on you. You're gonna be asleep the entire time, but you're still gonna be completely involved." Um, so that kind of works with with the stress. Like there'll be a blood thing for stress. Um, oh, beast or fury, maybe power, truth, passion, loyalty. Um, well, they call it the beast. That could be a thing that you use as well. Um, and hunger seems like it's not quite the right thing. Oh yeah, you're the one who survived. At the end of that, when everyone's like, "It's a one shot," all right, let's just all destroy each other, which is hilarious because that's not really what Smallville isn't really made for those kinds of battles, but like it works great when it's just character stuff going. 28. Big menu of mods. They're like power, truth, passion, loyalty, beast, maybe. Or no, instead of beast, um, maybe humanity, like their own humanity, like how they view either themselves or others. Um, because it gives them a way to actually utilize the possible alienness of them compared to humans or the connection that they have, kind of like on a base level. I mean, five could work. There's nothing that says it has to be six. Power, truth, passion, loyalty, humanity. And Micah, were you here when I explained how trait statements work? Trait statements are the key to unlocking this particular style of Cortex Prime. Or truth, passion, what I want control over, how I view truth itself. Do I want lies? Do I want things to be true? Do I manipulate it? Passion, the things I sort of love. The passion and loyalty. No, they do not. Okay, so what happens is you end up now. Generally, your values are going to end up with a set amount of like die raises. So let's say, I mean, let's say if you got like a D8, a D10, a D6, and a D12, like when one goes down, another one can kind of go up. Is generally how that stuff works because you don't want them all at D12 because it means you've got a better chance of like succeeding. Which weirdly, this is a game where you want to take stress, and if those get higher, that becomes more possible. With trait statements, if one trait comes down, you can actually raise another one up. Um, so relationships, those can kind of raise up. However, these ones um, will kind of slide. So what happens is you have a trait statement for each of these. So uh, truth. If you have the truth is what I say it is. Maybe you've got someone who has a bunch of abilities that can take control of others along those lines, and they have to face like an actual truth in a conflict. So you've got them maybe arguing with someone, and what's true actually matters, and your character has to admit that. Now that goes against what your truth statement is, which is good. This is the kind of stuff you want because then you can challenge that statement. Which means, let's say you have a D8 in that thing, because every time you roll, you're going to roll like where each of the gray lines are. Underneath that, you'll always roll one of those things uh, each time you make a roll, or you'll at least be able to. So if your trait statement is the truth is what I make it, and you have a D8 in it, what'll happen is you get to roll 3d8 on this roll. Um, a D8 goes into your growth pool, which is experience, and then for the rest of the session, it's gonna go down by one to a D6. And after that, what you can do is either rewrite it it goes back up to a D8, but you're seeing how how your belief in the truth is evolving. Like your character is actually evolving those traits over time. So it is a thing that the player actually has to take into account. And if you don't, it remains lower. And as I recall, this was at least in Smallville, and I think this should be here now. Another one can be bumped up because you want your traits to be a variety of things. If someone tries to power gain them all to D12 again, it it kind of defeats the purpose of it. I mean, relationships you could technically do that too, but you also gain experience when you like fail on those or have to challenge them. Because failure gives you stress. Stress becomes growth as well. So right now, let's go. I will put a TBD here for to be determined. Relationships can work exactly like they do in the game. Like, well, if you don't have a relationship with the person you're talking to, you either spend a plot point to get a D6 or you have a D4. But let's say my relationship, one that happened with my players, one of them had like, yeah, her thing was like, love just has to be true. We'll say they're both a D8s to make it easier. And another one was with her boyfriend was we were the popular couple at school. Now her brother was essentially trying to force her to break up with him by stealing her phone, and like the player wanted this to happen. The player's like, "Oh, please break because it'll cause drama because her boyfriend was awful. Like he was one of those really those characters it's fun to hate." Um, so she challenged the idea when it came down to him having the phone and going, like you know this is for the best," and then she decided to challenge her idea that love must always win. So she got 3d8 there, and then she challenged her relationship with like we're the popular couple, challenge that one. So she got like another 3d8. Great thing is you roll a big old handful of dice. You pick the ones you want. Like ones become complications, or in Smallville generally they become uh, the trouble pool. But they're rolling a bunch of dice. You can choose lower die numbers. You don't have like if you've got a whole bunch of them and some of them roll really high, you can go, well, I'm just going to take this 2 and this 4. Oops, I failed. Now I'm going to get stress. Stress becomes experience. It also gives you a reason to have a heart to heart with somebody to remove that experience. Um, that is the essential loop of Smallville. It is getting into position where you can challenge those trait statements, turn it into experience, have conflicts with someone that give you stress that then can become experience again that gives you reasons to have one-on-one uh, scenes with certain characters, and it's just sort of the loop that you go through with it. The relationships will work just kind of like normal. Oh, let's put a couple things here too. Now, the only other things, I'm going to basically do this pretty much straight up Smallville. For me, Vampire would be much better served in this one. So here we would have abilities, and I would make a note. I just want to merge those. So here we can put. Um, Now this is the one that like it helps to have a list of abilities like they have in Smallville. I think there are some in the main book. When the spotlights come out, there's a whole bunch of others because it can be useful to look through. Oh, so my thing. So the thing is, I have run when it first came out. I ran Leverage, I ran Smallville, I've run Marvel Heroic, I've run Firefly, which is a kind of a mix of Marvel Heroic and Leverage. So I know the system well enough because it actually once you know how all these parts work, putting them together is really simple. Like I'm making some changes here from Smallville on how things work, but I'm using that as kind of the basic chassis. Like we're taking the the relationships and values, which are kind of the core of it. The way it uses a few of the other things can be super useful as well. Like the way it uses not assets. They're called guest stars on the thing. Let me actually just double check the character sheet to remember what those are called. What's up? The extras. The way it uses extras or locations can be super useful, especially in like a vampire game. because they give you a bit of a bonus, but you can't over rely on them. So just having done it several times, it's a game that if you have played some of the like maybe already put together mods, put those together and see how the different parts of it work, it becomes pretty intuitive on how to do this. Like I was before Cortex Prime came out, I was using the Hacker's Guide, which just is basically like, oh yeah, here's sort of how it's split up, but we're not gonna like break it down into the mods the way they did with uh, Cortex Prime. And it was very easy just to kind of put things together to get very different feeling games. Yeah, so in the back of Cortex Prime, so we'll pause from here and from putting this together. So there are like I think it's 3 different things in the back of Cortex. I'll take you through those a little bit. Because essentially all I have to put here, I'll just make a note. This we'd have extras, locations, and to be honest, I'm essentially pretty much done except for a couple possibilities on here. I've pretty much got the character sheet I would need. Um, oh yeah, I would make a note here. Let me just do this real quick. Regular abilities work as normal. Disciplines start at D4 and get an FSFX for every die, which will map to the 1 to 5 from like the vampire the discipline rules, and then if you go up above it, it uses scaling above 5, which is a thing I've mentioned previously. So let's take a look real quick at the. Oh, you know me from TikTok Dance Floor? Um, let's take a look at the ones that come in Cortex because I think the best way to do it, like they've got some stuff in here that's pretty simple to set up and go with, and I think what you probably should do is oh, hello. What you probably should do with Cortex is literally just take some of those. Now, I am hoping, and I think Millie actually might be someone who's partly in charge of this, that if I'm recalling correctly, because it's been a while since I've been on the Cortex Discord because I haven't been running it for a little bit. I think one of the things that you do if you go into the settings that they've got there, 125. And let me explain what each of these settings do. I've glanced through them, but really, honestly, if you look at like a character sheet, that by itself tells me a lot about how a Cortex mod works. So here, and I own but have not read Tales of Zadia. Okay, I'm hoping those spotlights come out. I think those spotlights are going to do a huge amount to help demystify this for people. Um, you've got certain archetypes you can grab that will give you here. Let me get the one that's a little less. I know this one is you grabbing Eidolon Alpha. I've looked through it a little bit, but it's been a bit. So it uses attributes, courage, grace, guile, reason, and vigor. You have roles and distinctions. Now, roles, like in Leverage, for example, it's like hitter, hacker, mastermind, grifter, thief, which means like you always roll one of those. That one uses attributes, like a hacker who's brute forcing through something. Oh, hey, um, a hacker who's brute forcing through something would use hacker and strength. A fighter who is being like very balletic in how they're attacking things and using a lot of agility would put like dexterity, or like the Sherlock Holmes Robert Downey Jr. style would use intelligence and like hitter, for example. So yeah, we've got distinctions are one of the standard ones. They have some power traits and SFX. Now, take a look at those because those will be useful for you if you're doing something with Vamp. Um, okay, so I'm just double checking here because some of this it's written down just a little differently than I've seen in other places. So I just want to make sure. Okay, nope, that's it. So for example, let's make this part bigger. See if you can see it. I don't know if you can see this Minotaur's Metal Arc. Now remember, this is not something I've looked all the way through, but just knowing the system, Melly, you pronounce Melly, I'm hoping you might be able to help me here, just to make sure I got it right. So Minotaur's Metal Arc would be a power set, which is not what I would be using for Vampire. You get like bronze skin, senses, or strength. You get to use one of those in each of your rolls. If it gets hindered, if usually the GM does something to hinder it, you gain a power point and you switch it out for a D8 or a D4 instead of a D8. You can also do that yourself. Um, Against bronze skin die to raise it up when defending its natural weapons. Spend a power point or plot point to find your way out of any building, trap, or maze. Summon, shut down its distinction to summon the Minotaur. Let me actually show you what those look like in Smallville. I think like these ones do some interesting things, but they're also a little more complex. Uh, oh, I think it's in its own folder. Cortex Plus folder, but I have not put any of the Cortex. Um, so these are one of the things that would be a key part of vampire, because you got your disciplines, you want those abilities and powers, but you also want the stuff that isn't um age level. You also want the stuff that isn't going to simply be I only have powers. You want the other stuff as well. So if we go to 102, actually, let me show you the character sheets. That'll be a little bit easier. Um, 132. Let's go to Clark Kent. Good old Superman. We all know him. And I am going to now here they've written like where it's in the blue here, if you can see that. The Blur, Daily Planet Reporter, Farm Boy, those are his distinctions. And then over here, they've got duty, I must fulfill my parents' hopes for me. Glory, the blur gives me hope. Power corrupts. Oh, on the other. Oh, if you are on TikTok. Oh shoot. Try this. Let me move that over. There we go. On Twitch, I've got the. On Twitch, you can see both things. It's a little harder on, or actually, if you turn your thing, your phone, you'll get one where you can see both. But you can see here. So they've got relationships. I need to be there for Chloe, D10. Jonathan was my moral compass, D4. These are things that he's able to use. But let's look at his abilities. You're thinking Superman could have a lot of abilities. His assets. Now, he's got Big Hearted, and some of the special effects he's got, like earn a plot point when you choose to buy someone's sob story, earn a plot point and add a d6 to Trouble Pool when you risk yourself to help someone in need. I wouldn't be using Trouble Pool for Vampire because Trouble Pool it kind of grows over the thing, and I think Vampire you want to be able to put more consistent pressure, and complications will be a more interesting aspect than complications will be a more interesting aspect than Trouble Pool or Doom Pool when it comes to doing a vampire thing. Impulsive. One special effect, you can earn a plot point and add a d6 to Trouble when you act rashly, or earn a plot point when you choose to interfere in a contest. You essentially have as you get more dice in there, you get more kind of special abilities. Like a D6 gives you one, a D8 gives you two, 12 gives you three. But then he's got like invulnerability, D10. He can spend a plot point to decrease an opponent's injured or exhausted stress pool, make it so that he's not as much injured or exhausted, or he can recover his own. Super Breath, D6. Spend a plot point to trap someone in a sheet of ice. They must win a contest to break free, or clear a scene of all dust, smoke, and loose debris. We had someone, I did a game where they were working in a fantasy tavern, and one of them was a demon who was working there, and she, with her strength, could actually like eject people from a scene, and she had a whole bunch of plot points, and she decided to eject essentially a whole bunch of guards who came in because there had been a problem before, and literally just kicked them all across the street, which caused wonderful problems for the thing itself. So in Cortex Prime, you will see things like this. Now, the Eidolon Alpha it's set up in a way that is not as at a glance as easy to see those things. Um, Let me make this a little. Oh, here we go. Priest, Scout. We've got rolls. Okay, yeah, that uses the rolls. Oh yeah, that's fantastic. That's the best part of it. Let me get past. this one. Hammerheads. Hammerheads uses special effects. I played this with Cam actually. Let's make this a little bigger so we can look there. This one's got training packages, which are essentially skills plus your attributes. You would essentially roll a physical, mental, or social plus one of your training packages. Um, you got your distinction. Your distinctions here have special effects, which is a thing you can do as well. Make this a little big. I'm sure this sheet is probably actually somewhere else. Yeah, special effects gain a plot point when you switch out your distinction for a D4, which is pretty standard. Spend a plot point to step up an attribute when you connect to your old life. So this is one where your attributes can actually change throughout. Add a d6 to the crisis pool to double your attribute die when you connect to your old life. Because this is about being ex special forces. So I believe there is a list in Cortex Prime. Because the thing is, I've always just kind of gone back to Smallville because it's got a really wonderful list of things that are really good for character stuff. And then I would basically take the vampire book for people taking disciplines, and we would kind of look at it and go, what does it do at this level? We'll give you something similar there. Because you can actually just, you can kind of wing a lot of it, just like in the role play, but you want to give some special effects that also tie in. Because most special effects require a plot point or something specific to be happening in the fiction or something along those lines. But you still get to use the power to do the things it does. Special effect does extra stuff. Yeah, I need to read Tales of Zadia. I have it. I tried to watch Dragon Prince, and it drives me a little nuts because it can't decide if it's gonna be a dark fantasy or if it's gonna be a little kid show, and it goes back and forth in a way that like the comic book Bone did a lot better. Like it felt very natural there because things just got kind of worse. There's times where it's just the characters feel like they're in a kid show, but the world feels like it wants to be like Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings. Like things are dark and dangerous. So I fell off the show. Yeah, there was things I liked about what I saw, but it was yeah, it just I wanted to like, I really did want to like it. Um, yeah, so if you want to learn Cortex, so I'm trying to see. I Millie, you might know. Does one of these have a lot in like the trait statements? I can't remember if those were up with Eidolon Prime. Because for me, if you're able to run something that's set up kind of like Marvel Heroic, which I think Eidolon Prime looks like it's got power sets, which is a big part of that. Um, Also, are there just actual character sheets, like pre-made character sheets here? Because there have to be. Yeah, because honestly, if I just look at the character sheets, that's honestly all you need to get a decent chunk. Yeah, they got big stuff here on the different power SFF, the power special effects. That's something you can use. Oh, here's a whole bunch of different power stuff. This can give you ideas for what to use for. Uh, this gives you ideas for what to do with the disciplines. If you, they're not going to be exactly there, but if you look through, you can kind of see how powers work. That's how I would essentially model disciplines. Um, okay, so yeah, Tales of Zadia has it. Like the trait statements for me, that's my favorite. Okay, here we go. Um, like I said, one thing I love about it again, you can just look at a sheet and know how something goes pretty well. Oh, does the site have that information too? That could be cool. Yeah, we got, and like you'll notice here, it's got like relationships here. Here it's got Aiden needs me even if you don't realize it. Which if this is using the trait statements where you can challenge it, does this use? And it's got yeah, this one actually looks like it's set up that way. Though you don't have trait statements for value. You do have a mental, physical, and social, which you could do with this. Yeah, so if you look at these, they can kind of give you some ideas. So here we got relationships. These just don't have trait statements, though. Distinctions here have special effects. Um, I guess we've got one here with a power set. Power sets. This is much more limited than say the power sets that you get in like Marvel Heroic. Oh, here we go. This is at the Midnight Blue is much more like the Marvel Heroic. It looks like Power of Night. You can use one of these unless you use like a plot point. I think to use more special effects when in the shadows. Spend a plot point to gain your godlike stamina to recover your physical stress. Um, yeah, if you've got some friends you can get together who want to just sort of play with the system a bit. Uh, in my experience, and just this is also just looking over it. I think, and let me know if this is yours as well. Um, the Thunder, what is it called? The Thunderbird style one about rescuing stuff runs pretty quickly. It's also probably the easiest of like between Eidolon, Trace, and Hammerhead. Hammerhead? Yeah, the Hammerheads. That's probably going to be the easiest one to create and just run like a one shot with. What I'd recommend is doing that and then maybe trying your hand on a couple of the other ones. Once you've run a couple different types of Cortex, oh yeah, Hammerhead's free on the website. Once you've run a couple different types of Cortex, what you start to find is you start to see how the matrix works. Like for me, plugging this stuff together, like the biggest thing for me here was figuring out what I want the values to be, what I want the stress pools. And there's probably two more that I want to be, to be determined. Special things I would do with blood, which I've kind of put here. These are both like this sheet is in my link tree. There's a thing with Cortex Prime where I have been going through, and I'll put some of the specifics down here at some point. But I went through like Marvel Heroic and said, and I also did a video on TikTok about it. Like, here's how to do that. I did leverage is probably the easiest one to follow. You can actually take leverage with the character sheets I have on there and the cheat sheet. You could run leverage, and leverage is I think the perfect introduction to Cortex Prime. It's designed to be done like really quickly. Like you sit down and you start playing very fast. Players get a hold of it really easily. Yeah, leverage is it's still I believe it is still the best heist game I've ever seen. But I've got on if you look at the video I put with the basics in this one, and you look at the cheat sheet and the character sheets, that yes, Blades in the Dark I believe took some ideas from Leverage. Blades in the Dark I believe is an amazing Thieves Guild game. I think heists it does okay. It does better than most, but Leverage I think is my number one for heists. Dusk City Outlaws is probably number two. Um, not quite heists, it's missions, but Wilderness of Mirrors would sort of be up there as well. Um, though that's a little bit more like special operative missions, which is a bit different. Um, but yeah, between either Hammerheads or if you want to check out Leverage, look through like the things on there, like basically print out a character sheet, look at that, and kind of check the way I describe it on there. You should be able to run it pretty easily, and then be like you're not going to have all the GM advice, you're not going to have all of the other stuff, but to just kind of get your feet wet with it would probably work pretty well. I think that's probably a good way to start. Do a couple of those before you kind of hop into Vampire, because if you want to do Vampire with Cortex, it would be extremely rewarding. The Smallville style games I've run, and I've done Deadwood. I've done like basically Deadwood. We did a Persona that was we use it for the slice of life in the high school. We use it for a House of Cards style game. We use it for uh, the Red Dragon Inn, which was the fantasy tavern where adventurers came to the tavern, but everybody in the game was like the owner and the people that worked there. It was just about the drama of working in like your life and working in this tavern, which was those are all a lot of fun. But of the kind of basic Cortex things you can put together, Smallville is the more complicated one to kind of wrap your head around. But I think it's highly worth it because I think it's pretty amazing. Yeah, I've been on for if you get how Cortex works, like if you kind of play a few of those, what you're going to find is it's a generic game, but you can fine tune it better than any other generic game I've ever seen. Because a GURPS is always going to feel like GURPS, regardless of the mods you put. It's still going to have a pretty strong GURPS feel. Um, Fate is always going to feel like Fate. Even something like iHunt, which does some interesting things, it's still Fate. Leverage, Marvel Heroic, and Smallville have a basic rolling thing that's in common, but they feel very different, and they have kind of different levels of tension on the rolls. Like it places tension in different places. You feel like you have a lot more power in those other two because you're rolling more with leverage. You're world class, but you're only rolling usually two, maybe three dice at a time. So everything feels a little more like risky. Then Firefly also did some really good stuff with it. Yeah, Cortex shines when you start to understand it through stuff that's already been put together. And again, there were, I mean, good, let me just double check. The spotlights that came out for the backers, which are going to be released in, I think, a couple different. Yeah, I mean, Cortex does a really good job of like TV show slash movie. Um, Cortex Prime spotlights. There are 14. Is that correct? Or there's something like 14 or so spotlights that all are they're fairly short. Well, this one's 44 pages, um, but it goes through and put this one deals with hypothermia. Uh, this is the Snowfall Initiative, and people have kind of done some really cool and creative things with it. I did one of the kind of jams that they did on the Discord, like feels like a couple years ago now, where I actually got to like make something that was a little bit Nightmares of Futures Past, uh, in certain respects. And I think those it's frustrating because it's a great game, but they need to get those damn spotlights out so that people see how it works. Because if you get a book with like 3 to 4 distinct ways to run it, especially if they try to make sure they keep a variety of them in there, I think it's going to unlock this system for a lot of people. I've always wondered what it was like to approach Cortex without knowing it, and it always struck me as like you said, being a fairly like daunting thing. It's like put all this together, but like GURPS has got like here's our basic stuff, and you can add these little bits. Cortex is like we have a little bit at the start now, build all this different. It just seems like a bad business decision not to at least throw them out as PDFs. Um, yeah, that's the unfortunate bit. But I say there's 3 of them in this book. If you look at my stuff that I put up there, you can essentially run leverage with Cortex Prime. I would start with one of those. And if you run the 3 that are in here, that'll probably give you a decent idea of how a lot of those things work. I think I wish I thought it did more with good trait statements. But yeah, they do give you a start there. I wish the start was easier for people. I think if they get, yeah, the Discord will be a good place to ask questions. I mean, right now, Tales of Zadia is the only thing out for Cortex Prime that I'm aware of, and I know I think they were trying to do a yeah, it's and like I said, leverage is pretty dead simple to like run and play. The cheat sheets there will help you because some of the stuff has what the GM needs. It goes over like the flashbacks, and I talk a little bit about that in the videos. If you go on my playlist for Cortex Prime, you'll see the second one is leverage. I've got leverage. I've got a basic Cortex Prime, leverage, and then Marvel Heroic. I'm gonna do a Smallville one at some point. I will probably hop off here soon because basically I've got if I were to run Vampire, I would be pretty much ready to go. Um, with what I've got here, we would just kind of create the distinctions on the fly, but it helps that the I've got the experience, and I've also got some of the other books to look through to go. Oh, I'll basically just steal some of the stuff from Smallville because a lot of their abilities and such, or whatever, I can't remember what they're called. Those work really well. You want someone who's impetuous, pull it off the thing, and you're good to go. Yeah, if you got questions, like hit me up. Like the Discord's a good place to kind of go and look. But yeah, I would dip your foot in on some of the ones that are pre-built. That'll help you start to see the connections. All right, thank you so much. Hope you enjoy. I hope you can kind of get a handle on it because it is absolutely. It's such. The game is so worth it, and it can do so many different things. It's one of the reasons I love it so much. But I will catch you later.